Please forgive me, CEO.
She dumped her broke boyfriend. A year later, he owned the company she worked for. She dumped him on a Thursday evening in the kind of restaurant where the silverware gleamed brighter than most people's futures. Evan sat across from her, eyes tired from another 16-hour day of chasing investors who wouldn't return his calls. His voice was calm, hopeful even. "I just need a little more time, Mia." But Mia didn't even glance up from her phone. Her red nails tapped against the glass screen like she was keeping tempo with her impatience. "Time," she said with a half laugh. "Evan, time doesn't pay rent." The waiter froze between them, unsure whether to pour the wine or disappear. Her tone wasn't cruel, it was clinical, detached. The kind of tone people use when they've already moved on in their heads. She finally looked up, her eyes softening in a way that felt rehearsed. "You had potential, Evan. I believed in you. But potential doesn't pay for a future. I can't live off dreams." He wanted to speak, to tell her he was close to something big, that his new app could actually change things. But the words got stuck somewhere between his chest and his pride. She stood, adjusting the strap of her designer purse, and said the words that would replay in his head for months. "You're a good man, Evan. You just weren't enough." Then she walked out, her perfume lingering longer than her goodbye. He didn't chase her. He just sat there, staring at the untouched wine, the bill, and the empty seat across from him. The city outside kept moving, but something inside him stopped. For the next few months, Evan disappeared from the world that had already forgotten him. His startup failed, his partners bylaid, and his savings evaporated faster than his hope. He moved into a one-room apartment above a bar, living on coffee and leftover takeout. But through the exhaustion, the humiliation, the endless noise of the city below, he kept coding. Every keystroke was a defiance. Every line of code was a silent promise that he wasn't done yet. He built and rebuilt, failed and restarted, until one sleepless night, 3:12 a.m., the kind of hour when only obsession survives, the algorithm worked. His app predicted a real-time market spike before it happened. He stared at the numbers, not blinking, not believing, until he finally whispered, "It works." From that moment, things shifted. Investors who once ghosted him started calling back. His inbox filled with offers. Within a year, the name Evan Gray was being spoken in venture circles like a legend. His app, Foresight, became a phenomenon, sold for $80 million before his 30th birthday. He bought new offices, new cars, new suits, but not once did he call Mia. Until fate decided to be funny. At a high-end networking event, ironically held in the same restaurant where she'd left him, Evan saw her again. Mia looked almost exactly the same. Flawless hair, glittering smile, a little older but just as practiced in the art of pretending she wasn't looking for something. She was there with a man twice her age, one of those loud-laughing rich types who treated money like oxygen. When she spotted Evan, her laugh cracked mid-note. She excused herself, heels clicking like gunfire on marble, and said softly, "Evan, oh my God, is that really you?" He smiled, calm and unreadable. "Mia, it's been a while." "I heard you did well for yourself," she said, her eyes scanning his suit, his watch, the quiet power he wore now like armor. He nodded, "A little luck, a lot of work." She laughed awkwardly. "You always had potential." This time he laughed too, but not the way he used to. It wasn't warm, it was knowing. Over the next few weeks, she slipped back into his orbit. Coffee, dinner, messages late at night that started with "Hey, can't sleep," and ended with ellipses full of nostalgia. She was charming again, softer, sweeter. But Evan wasn't the same man she left behind. He knew about her new boyfriend, Victor Lang, a hedge fund manager with more greed than sense. He knew about her failed business ventures, her debts, her carefully filtered lies. He knew that Victor's firm had invested millions into a new predictive trading platform that, funny enough, he controlled through a shell company. He let her talk about second chances and forgiveness. He smiled when she said things like, "I always knew you'd make it." And when she leaned closer across the table, perfume wrapping around his memory like smoke, he said gently, "We all make mistakes, Mia. Some just take longer to correct. That night he walked her to her car, kissed her cheek and said, "We'll talk soon." She smiled like she'd already won. But by morning, Victor Lang's company was burning. The anonymous report that hit financial regulators was brutal, detailed, precise, damning. The firm's biggest asset was under investigation for fraud. Within 48 hours, their stock crashed. Investors fled. Victor blamed Mia, claiming she'd leaked information. She blamed him for everything else. Their relationship collapsed under headlines and hashtags. When Mia finally called Evan, her voice trembled. "Evan, did you have something to do with this?" He didn't answer right away. He just let the silence stretch, long enough for her to hear the faint echo of her own betrayal from years ago. Then softly he said, "You remember what you told me that night. That time doesn't pay rent." Her breath hitched. "Well," he said, "sometimes time pays interest." The line went dead. Weeks later, the scandal faded from the headlines, but Mia's name didn't. She lost everything: her apartment, her sponsorships, the people who used to call her their it girl. Her smile disappeared from social media. Her phone stopped buzzing. Silence became her new luxury. One rainy evening, she found herself standing outside that same restaurant, the one where she'd broken a man who built himself back from nothing. The lights glowed warmly inside, laughter spilling into the street. She pushed open the door and whispered to the host, "Is Mr. Gray here?" The host smiled politely. "Mr. Gray, he sold this place last week." "Sold it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," said he'd finally gotten what he needed from it. She nodded, though she didn't understand. When she stepped back into the rain, she finally did. The place she'd left him was the place he'd used to rise, and now that part of the story was over. Across town, in a penthouse lit by lightning and glass reflections, Evan stood by the window with a drink in his hand. He wasn't celebrating. There was no triumph in his eyes, only peace. On the table beside him was a photo, him and Mia years ago, before money and ego turned love into currency. He placed it face down and whispered, "Thank you, Mia. You taught me that love without respect is just business." He turned away from the skyline, the empire he'd built, the ghosts he'd outgrown. The thunder rolled softly in the distance, and for the first time in years he smiled, not because he'd won, but because he finally didn't need to.